After 15 years abroad, I returned to surprise my daughter. But when I walked into the house, I saw her, on her knees scrubbing the floor. Covered in bruises. Wearing a filthy apron labeled Whitmore family janitor. Trembling, terrified, treated like a servant in her own home. My name is Cynthia Sluggard. I'm 64 years old. And what I'm about to tell you will shake you to your core. But before I tell you how everything unfolded, like this video, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from, morning, noon, or night. 15 years. That's how long I spent in Paris. 15 years of early mornings in a cramped studio apartment, late nights working double shifts at a luxury hotel, saving every euro I could scrape together. 15 years of missing birthdays, holidays, graduations. 15 years of sacrificing my own comfort so I could send money back home to my daughter, Rebecca. So she could have the life I never had. So she could raise her children in a home that was truly hers. I bought that house for her with my own sweat and tears. A beautiful 3-bedroom home in a quiet neighborhood with a backyard where my grandchildren could play. I signed the deed over to her when she was just 23 years old, newly married, glowing with hope. I wanted her to have security. Stability. A foundation. And then I left. I had to. The job in Paris paid 3 times what I could make here, and Rebecca needed support. Her husband, Jamie Whitmore, came from money, but I didn't trust his family. There was something cold about them. Something calculating. But Rebecca was in love, and I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that distance and time would ease my worries. I was wrong. For 15 years, I lived an ocean away, working myself to the bone, sending money home, video calling when I could. But the calls became shorter. Rebecca's smile seemed dimmer. Her voice grew quieter. She always had excuses. I'm just tired, Mom. The kids keep me busy. Everything's fine, really. I should have known. A mother should always know. But I convinced myself that she was just adjusting to motherhood, to marriage, to adult life. I convinced myself that the dark circles under her eyes were from sleepless nights with the babies, not from something far more sinister. 3 months ago, I finally saved enough. I finally had enough for a plane ticket home, enough to retire, enough to be close to my family again. I didn't tell Rebecca I was coming. I wanted it to be a surprise. I wanted to see her face light up when I walked through that door. I wanted to scoop up my grandchildren, Lily, now 12, and James, now 9, and hold them close. I wanted to be home. The flight felt endless. My heart pounded with anticipation the entire way. I kept imagining the reunion. The tears. The laughter. The hugs that would last forever. I pictured us sitting around the kitchen table, catching up on everything we'd missed. I pictured tucking my grandchildren into bed and reading them stories like I used to read to Rebecca. I took a taxi from the airport straight to the house. My house. Rebecca's house. Our home. It was just afternoon on a Tuesday. The neighborhood looked exactly as I remembered it. Tree-lined streets. Neatly trimmed lawns. Children's bicycles leaning against garage doors. Everything seemed peaceful. Normal. I paid the driver and stood on the sidewalk for a moment, just staring at the house. It looked different. The paint was peeling in places. The garden I had planted before I left was overgrown and wild. The mailbox hung at an odd angle. But it was still standing. Still there. I walked up the driveway, my suitcase rolling behind me. I still had my key. I'd kept it all these years, a small piece of home I carried with me across the ocean. I unlocked the front door quietly. I wanted to surprise them. And then I heard it. Voices. Harsh. Cruel. Dripping with contempt. You missed a spot, you useless cow. Get back down there and scrub it again. A woman's voice. Shrill. Vicious. And when you're done with that, the bathrooms need cleaning. All 4 of them. I want them spotless by the time we get back from lunch. A man's voice. Cold. Authoritative. I froze in the doorway, my blood turning to ice. And then I heard her. Yes, Mrs. Whitmore. I'm sorry, Mrs. Whitmore. Rebecca. My daughter. My beautiful, brilliant daughter. Her voice was small. Broken. Terrified. I dropped my suitcase and ran toward the voices. They were coming from the living room. My living room. The room where I used to rock Rebecca to sleep when she was a baby. The room where we used to dance to old records on Sunday mornings. And there she was. On her knees. Scrubbing the hardwood floor with a rag that looked like it hadn't been washed in weeks. Wearing an apron. A stained, filthy apron with words printed across the front in bold black letters, Whitmore Family Janitor. Her arms were covered in bruises. Fresh purple ones. Fading yellow ones. Old green ones. Some looked like fingerprints. Some looked like she'd been grabbed. Shoved. Hurt. Her hair, once thick and shiny, hung limp and greasy around her face. Her hands were red and raw from chemicals. Her knees were scraped and bleeding through her torn jeans. She was trembling. Standing over her were 2 people I recognized from photographs. Jamie's parents. Gerald and Patricia Whitmore. Dressed in expensive clothes. Gerald in a tailored suit. Patricia in a designer dress and heels. Both of them looking down at my daughter like she was nothing. Like she was dirt. And behind them, in the doorway, was Jamie. My son-in-law. Watching. His face twisted into something ugly. Something satisfying. Little Lily stood in the corner, her eyes wide with fear, her schoolbooks clutched against her chest. She looked like she wanted to disappear. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could feel was rage. Pure, burning, murderous rage. What the hell is going on here? My voice came out like a roar. Like a wounded animal. Like a mother who had just seen her child being destroyed. They all spun around. Rebecca's face went white. The Whitmores looked startled for half a second, then annoyed. Jamie's expression shifted instantly from cruelty to a sickening, plastic smile. Cynthia, he said, his voice dripping with false warmth. What a surprise. We weren't expecting you. I ignored him. I ran to Rebecca and dropped to my knees beside her, pulling her into my arms. She was shaking so hard I thought she might collapse. She tried to hide the bruises, pulling her sleeves down, turning her face away. She tried to take off the apron, fumbling with the ties, her fingers clumsy and panicked. Baby, I whispered, my voice cracking. Baby, what have they done to you? Mom, she choked out, tears streaming down her face. Mom, please. Don't. Please. Don't what? I demanded, looking up at the Whitmores. Don't ask why my daughter is on her knees in her own home. Don't ask why she's covered in bruises. Don't ask why she's wearing this degrading. I ripped the apron off her and threw it on the ground. Patricia Whitmore sniffed, looking down her nose at me. Your daughter is fulfilling her obligations to this family. She signed an agreement. Legally binding. She's simply holding up her end of the bargain. Bargain? I repeated, my voice shaking. What bargain? Jamie stepped forward, his smile still plastered on his face, but his eyes were cold. Hard. Mom, you've been gone a long time. Things have changed. Rebecca had some difficulties a few years back. Health issues. She needed help. My family stepped in. We took care of everything. The house, the bills, the kids. Everything. In exchange, Rebecca agreed to assist with household duties. It's all perfectly legal. Household duties? I spat the words like poison. She's scrubbing floors like a slave. She's covered in bruises. You're treating her like. She's clumsy, Gerald interrupted, his voice bored. Always tripping over her own feet. We've told her to be more careful. I looked at Rebecca. She was staring at the floor, tears dripping onto her lap, her whole body shaking. She looked so small. So defeated. Lily was crying quietly in the corner. This wasn't my daughter. This wasn't the strong, bright, beautiful girl I raised. This was a woman who had been broken. Get out, I said quietly. Patricia laughed. Actually laughed. Excuse me? Get out of this house, I said, louder now. This is my daughter's house. I bought it for her. You have no right to be here. Jamie's smile finally dropped. Actually, Cynthia, this is our house now. Rebecca signed it over to my family 3 years ago. We have the documents. Legal. Notarized. Ironclad. So if anyone needs to leave, it's you. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. That's not possible, I whispered. She wouldn't. She did, Patricia said smugly. She was quite eager to do so, actually. After her little breakdown. Breakdown? Rebecca let out a sob. A horrible, gut-wrenching sob that made my heart shatter into a million pieces. Mom, she whispered. Please. Just go. Please. Don't make this worse. They'll take the kids. They'll take Lily and James. They said if I don't cooperate, if I don't do what they say, they'll. Will what? Jamie said, his voice turning sharp. We'll enforce our legal rights as co-guardians? Rights your daughter also signed over? Yes. We will. I wanted to kill him. I wanted to wrap my hands around his throat and squeeze until he stopped breathing. I wanted to make him feel every ounce of pain he'd inflicted on my child. But Lily was watching. And Rebecca was begging me with her eyes. So I stood up slowly. I looked each of them in the eye. Gerald. Patricia. Jamie. This isn't over, I said quietly. Not even close. Jamie smirked. Oh, I think it is. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a lunch reservation. Rebecca, make sure the bathrooms are clean by the time we return. And for God's sake, try not to break anything else. They walked out. Just like that. Like they owned the place. Like my daughter was nothing. The front door slammed shut. And Rebecca collapsed into my arms, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. It took me an hour to calm her down. An hour of holding her, rocking her, whispering that I was here now, that I wouldn't leave, that we would fix this. Lily brought her mother a glass of water with shaking hands. James came home from school and immediately ran to his room when he saw his mother crying. He'd learned to make himself invisible. When Rebecca could finally speak, the story that came out destroyed me. 4 years ago, she gave birth to her 3rd child. A little boy named Thomas. The pregnancy had been difficult. The birth was even worse. Thomas was born premature. He spent 2 months in the NICU. And then, one terrible morning, he stopped breathing. My grandson died, and I wasn't there. Rebecca fell apart. Postpartum depression crashed into her like a wave. She couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't function. She was drowning, and Jamie did nothing. His family did nothing. Until they saw an opportunity. While Rebecca was at her lowest, barely able to get out of bed, Patricia Whitmore showed up with papers. Legal documents. She told Rebecca it was just temporary. Just until she got better. They would take care of everything. The house. The bills. The kids. All Rebecca had to do was sign. So she did. She was on medication that made her foggy. She was grieving. She was desperate. She trusted them. The documents transferred ownership of the house to the Whitmore Family Trust. They gave Gerald and Patricia co-guardianship of Lily and James. They established Jamie as Rebecca's financial controller, meaning she couldn't access her own bank accounts. And buried in the fine print was a clause that required Rebecca to provide household services in exchange for continued residence in the property. Household services. They turned my daughter into an unpaid servant. At first, it was just cooking and cleaning. Then it escalated. They moved her out of the master bedroom and into a storage room in the basement. They made her sleep on a cot. They gave her that apron and told her to wear it at all times when she was working, which was every waking hour. They controlled what she ate. When she slept. What she wore. They hit her when she made mistakes. Jamie hit her. Patricia hit her. Gerald never got his hands dirty, but he watched. He approved. They told her that if she tried to leave, if she complained, if she contacted anyone, they would take Lily and James away. They would claim she was an unfit mother. They had lawyers. They had money. They had power. And she had nothing. She had no phone, they'd taken it. No money, they'd frozen her accounts. No car, Jamie controlled that too. No friends, they'd isolated her completely. For 3 years, my daughter lived as a prisoner in her own home. And I had no idea. I tried to tell you, Mom, she sobbed. I tried. But they monitored the video calls. Patricia would stand right behind the camera. If I said anything wrong, she'd hurt the kids after you hung up. So I smiled. I lied. I pretended everything was fine because I didn't know what else to do. I held her tighter, tears streaming down my own face. You did what you had to do, I whispered. You protected your babies. But I'm here now. And I swear to God, Rebecca, I swear on everything I have, I will fix this. I will destroy them. Do you hear me? I will make them pay for every single thing they've done to you. She looked up at me with hollow, hopeless eyes. You can't, she whispered. They're too powerful. They have everything. We have nothing. I cupped her face in my hands. We have each other, I said. And we have the truth. Now tell me everything. Every detail. Every document. Every witness. Every piece of evidence. Because we're going to bury them. The next few days were a blur of rage-fueled investigation. I stayed in that house. I slept on the floor of Rebecca's storage room because I refused to leave her alone. The Whitmores didn't like it, but they couldn't legally throw me out, not yet, anyway. While they were out during the day, Rebecca showed me everything she'd hidden. She'd kept medical files. Records from her psychiatrist showing the medication she was on when she signed those documents. Notes from her therapist detailing her mental state. Hospital records from Thomas's death and her subsequent breakdown. She'd kept copies of the documents they'd made her sign. She'd taken photos of the bruises with an old camera she'd hidden in the basement. She'd written down dates and times of every incident of abuse. Every threat. Every degrading task they'd forced her to do. My daughter had been gathering evidence for 3 years, too terrified to use it but too smart not to collect it. Why didn't you go to the police? I asked. Her laugh was bitter. Jamie's uncle is the police chief. His cousin is a judge. His college roommate is the district attorney. Who was I supposed to go to, Mom? Who would believe me? She had a point. But she didn't know what I knew. Money talks. Power corrupts. But evidence screams. I started making calls. I contacted Rebecca's psychiatrist and therapist. With Rebecca's permission, they agreed to provide statements detailing her mental state at the time she signed those documents. Both confirmed she'd been in no condition to enter into legal agreements. Both confirmed she'd been heavily medicated, severely depressed, and grieving. I visited the hospital where Thomas had been treated. I got copies of every record. Birth certificates. Death certificates. Medical reports. Everything that proved the timeline of Rebecca's breakdown. I went to my neighbors. Quietly. Carefully. I asked if they'd seen anything unusual over the past few years. And oh, they had stories. Stories about screaming coming from the house. Stories about seeing Rebecca outside in the middle of winter in just a thin dress, scrubbing the porch. Stories about the Whitmores coming and going at all hours, treating Rebecca like she was invisible. One neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Dorcas, grabbed my hand and squeezed it. I knew something was wrong, she whispered. But I didn't know what to do. I'm so glad you're here. I was building a case. Piece by piece. Document by document. Statement by statement. But I knew it wouldn't be enough. Not against people like the Whitmores. I needed a weapon. I needed someone who wasn't afraid of money or power or threats. I needed a lawyer who gave a damn. Her name was Diana Reeves. I found her through a support group for abuse survivors that I'd contacted online. Everyone said the same thing: if you want justice, if you want to fight back against powerful people who think they're untouchable, you call Diana Reeves. She was 58 years old, a former prosecutor who'd left the DA's office after getting tired of watching rich criminals walk free. Now she runs a private practice specializing in family exploitation, fraud, human trafficking, and vulnerable adult abuse. She didn't take many cases. Only the ones that made her angry. I called her office and left a message explaining everything. I didn't expect to hear back. Women like that are busy. Important. Why would she care about my daughter? She called me back 3 hours later. Tell me everything, she said. Don't leave anything out. So I did. For 2 hours, I sat in my car in a grocery store parking lot and told Diana Reeves every horrific detail of what the Whitmores had done to Rebecca. When I finished, there was silence on the other end of the line. Then, I'll take the case. Pro bono. Give me 3 days to review everything you've gathered. Can you get me copies? Yes, I said, my voice shaking. Yes, I can do that. Good. And Cynthia? Yes? We're going to destroy them. 3 days later, I met Diana at a coffee shop outside of town. She was a tall, striking woman with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that looked like they could cut through steel. She laid out a folder on the table between us. I've reviewed everything, she said. The medical records. The documents. The statements. And I've done some digging of my own into the Whitmore family. And? Her smile was sharp. Dangerous. They've done this before. My blood ran cold. What? Gerald Whitmore's first wife, Diana said, sliding a newspaper clipping across the table. Died under mysterious circumstances 20 years ago. Heart attack, they said. But she'd recently changed her will to cut Gerald out. 2 weeks later, she was dead. Gerald inherited everything. No investigation. Case closed. She slid another document across. Patricia Whitmore's sister. Signed over her entire estate to Patricia while battling cancer. Similar circumstances. Medicated. vulnerable. Legal documents that she supposedly agreed to. The sister died 6 months later. Patricia got everything. Another document. Jamie's ex-girlfriend from college took out a restraining order against him for physical abuse. The case was dropped after the Whitmores donated a new library to the university. She transferred schools and hasn't spoken publicly about it since. I felt sick. They're predators, I whispered. Yes, Diana said. And they're smart. They know how to exploit legal systems. They know how to intimidate. They know how to make people disappear into their own homes. But here's the thing they don't know. She leaned forward, her eyes blazing. They picked the wrong family this time. She opened another folder and laid out a strategic plan. 5 steps. Step 1, demand immediate surrender of the house and all fraudulent documents. Give them 48 hours. Step 2, file a civil lawsuit for fraud, elder abuse, false imprisonment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Step 3, file criminal complaints with the State Attorney General's office, bypassing local law enforcement. Step 4, contact the media. Let the public know what they've done. Step 5, freeze Whitmore assets to prevent them from fleeing or hiding money. This will get ugly, Diana warned. They'll fight back. They'll threaten. They'll try to intimidate you. They might even try to hurt Rebecca worse to make her back down. Are you prepared for that? I looked her dead in the eye. I'm prepared to walk through hell if it means my daughter is free. Diana smiled. Good. Let's go to war. We showed up at the Whitmore estate the next morning. Diana, myself, and a private investigator Diana had hired to document everything. The estate was obscene. A sprawling mansion on 20 acres with a circular driveway, a fountain, manicured gardens, and enough wealth on display to feed a small country. They'd built their empire on the backs of vulnerable people. Today, it was going to crumble. Patricia answered the door in a silk robe, a glass of champagne in her hand even though it wasn't even 10 a.m. Can I help you? She asked, her voice dripping with disdain. Diana stepped forward, all business. Diana Reeves, attorney for Rebecca Sluggard. We're here to discuss the immediate return of my client's property and the termination of all fraudulent agreements. Patricia laughed. Fraudulent? Don't be ridiculous. Everything was legal and above board. Now get off my property before I call the police. Call them, Diana said calmly. I'd love to file a report about the abuse and exploitation of a vulnerable adult. I'm sure the media would find it fascinating. Patricia's smile faltered. You're bluffing. Diana opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of documents. Medical records showing your daughter-in-law was medicated and mentally incapacitated when she signed your documents. Photographic evidence of physical abuse. Testimony from neighbors, doctors, and therapists. A forensic analysis of the contracts showing they were deliberately written to be predatory. And a legal opinion from 3 independent attorneys stating that every document Rebecca signed is null and void. She dropped the stack on the doorstep. You have 48 hours to voluntarily return ownership of the house, relinquish guardianship of the children, and release all financial controls. If you refuse, I will file both civil and criminal charges. I will contact every media outlet in this state. I will freeze your assets. And I will make it my personal mission to ensure you spend the rest of your miserable lives in prison. Gerald appeared behind Patricia, his face red with anger. You don't know who you're dealing with, he snarled. We have lawyers. Real lawyers. We have judges in our pocket. We have connections you can't even imagine. You're nobody. Your client is nobody. This is a waste of our time. Diana smiled. I was a prosecutor for 20 years. I sent men more powerful than you to prison. I'm not afraid of your lawyers or your judges or your connections. And if you think threatening me will work, you're stupider than you look. Jamie pushed past his parents, his face twisted with rage. You're going to regret this, he hissed. All of you. We will bury you. 48 hours, Diana repeated calmly. The clock starts now. We turned and walked away. Behind us, I could hear Gerald screaming. The Whitmores didn't comply. Of course they didn't. So Diana filed. Civil lawsuit. Criminal complaints. Emergency motions for custody and property rights. And then she called the media. The local newspaper ran the story on the front page. Prominent family accused of exploiting daughter-in-law, turning her into servant. The story went viral. Social media exploded. Hashtag Justice for Rebecca started trending. People were outraged. How could this happen? How could a family treat someone like this? How could the system fail so completely? Donations poured in. Strangers sent money to help Rebecca. Offers of legal support. Offers of shelter. Offers of anything she needed. The community rallied. Neighbors I'd never met showed up at the house with food, with supplies, with hugs and words of encouragement for Rebecca. And within 72 hours of filing, a judge granted an emergency injunction. The house was returned to Rebecca. The guardianship was dissolved. The financial controls were lifted. Jamie was ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from Rebecca and the children. It was a victory. But it wasn't over. The Whitmores didn't take the loss well. Phone calls started coming in the middle of the night. Heavy breathing. Threats. You'll regret this. We'll make you pay. You should have stayed quiet. Jamie showed up at the house twice, violating the restraining order both times. The first time, he banged on the door screaming until the police came. The second time, he tried to break in through the back. Rebecca was terrified. The kids were traumatized. We installed security cameras. Changed the locks. I started sleeping with a baseball bat next to my bed. Diana warned us this would happen. Cornered predators are the most dangerous, she said. Stay vigilant. Document everything. Don't engage with them. But I should have known they'd do something worse. It happened 2 weeks after the injunction. I woke up at 2 a.m. to the smell of smoke. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Then I heard the fire alarm. I bolted out of bed and ran to Rebecca's room, screaming her name. She was already up, grabbing the kids. Lily was crying. James was coughing. Get out! I yelled. Everyone out. Now. We ran down the stairs. Smoke was pouring in through the kitchen. Flames were licking up the walls. The back door was open. Someone had set the house on fire. We made it outside just as the fire trucks arrived. Neighbors were already on their lawns, watching in horror. The firefighters got it under control quickly. The damage was mostly contained to the kitchen and part of the living room. It could have been so much worse. But standing across the street, watching, was Jamie. Just standing there. Smiling. I saw him. The police saw him. And this time, they arrested him on the spot. Arson. Attempted murder. Violation of a restraining order. They found gasoline cans in his car. Matches in his pocket. Security footage from a neighbor's camera showed him breaking in through the back door. He'd tried to kill us. He'd tried to burn us alive. And now he was going to pay. The trial was swift. With all the evidence Diana had compiled, plus the arson, plus the media attention, the prosecutor threw the book at them. Jamie was charged with arson, attempted murder, assault, fraud, and human trafficking. Gerald and Patricia were charged as co-conspirators for the fraud and abuse. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Rebecca testified. She sat on that stand and told her story. Every brutal, humiliating detail. She showed the jury her scars. She explained the contracts. She cried. The jury cried with her. Neighbors testified. Doctors testified. Therapists testified. Diana presented the evidence methodically, piece by piece, building a case so airtight that the defense had nothing. The Whitmores sat in that courtroom every day, glaring at us, but for the first time, they looked scared. They should have been. The verdict came back unanimous. Guilty. On all counts. Jamie was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Gerald got 10 years. Patricia got 8 years. All 3 were ordered to pay full restitution to Rebecca. Every penny they'd taken. Every cent they'd stolen. Plus damages for emotional distress, medical costs, and punitive damages that totaled over $2 million. Their assets were seized. The mansion. The cars. The investments. Everything. The Whitmore empire collapsed. And my daughter was free. It's been 6 months since the trial ended. Rebecca is healing. Slowly. She has therapy twice a week. She still has nightmares. She still flinches when someone raises their voice. But every day, she gets a little stronger. Lily is thriving. She's back in school, making friends, laughing again. James is starting to come out of his shell. He doesn't hide in his room anymore. I moved into the house permanently. I'm not going anywhere. Not ever again. We renovated. Repainted the walls. Tore out the storage room in the basement and turned it into a playroom for the kids. Burned that goddamn apron. Rebecca is going back to school. She wants to be a social worker. She wants to help other people in situations like hers. I'm so proud of her I could burst. We have family dinners now. Real ones. With laughter and stories and love. The kids call me Grandma Cynthia and climb all over me. Rebecca smiles. Really smiles. And sometimes, late at night, she'll come sit with me on the porch, and we'll just be quiet together. Thank you, Mom, she said to me last week. Thank you for coming home. Thank you for fighting for me. Thank you for not giving up. I took her hand. I will always fight for you, I said. Always. No matter what. You're my daughter. And no one gets to hurt you and walk away. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby. More than you'll ever know. If you're watching this and you know someone who seems isolated, who seems afraid, who seems like they're being controlled, check on them. Don't assume everything is fine. Don't look away because it's uncomfortable or because you don't want to intrude. Ask questions. Offer help. Be persistent. Because there are predators in this world who prey on the vulnerable. Who uses power and money and manipulation to break people down. Who hide behind respectability and wealth while committing unspeakable cruelty. And sometimes, all it takes is one person who refuses to look away to change everything. I came home just in time. I shudder to think what would have happened if I'd waited even one more year. But I'm here now. And my daughter is free. And the people who hurt her are rotting in prison where they belong. That's justice. That's family. That's love. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And remember, always fight for the people you love. Always.